And yesterday, 2 members of a Rochdale sex grooming gang, let's call them what they are, child rapists. They've lost their long-running appeal against being deported to Pakistan. Adil Khan and Qari Abdul Rauf, both in their 50s, had fought the deportation on human rights grounds. Oh, we all care about our human rights, don't we, when we're caught out doing things? But an immigration tribunal said they should be removed from the UK. Judges said that Khan had shown a breathtaking lack of remorse, and there was a very strong public interest in both men being kicked out. The decision was made in August, but only public released yesterday. They were both convicted in, this is amazing, in 2012. Part of the gang that groomed dozens of girls for sex in the Lancashire town. Well, the woman who exposed those grooming gangs is Maggie Oliver. She's a former detective constable with the Greater Manchester Police. She's also founder of the wonderful Maggie Oliver Foundation. Maggie, so good to speak to you this morning, and great news that these men will finally, 10 years after their conviction and far longer after they were routinely gang raping young girls, they'll finally be sent to Pakistan.
Well, I'm holding my breath. That is grueling. We will have to see. I think it's good news. I think they should have been deported the moment they set foot out of prison. As you know, Adil Khan is the man who got the little girl of 13 pregnant, where we had a fetus. He was out of prison in less than 3 years. He's had millions of pounds in legal aid fighting this. And he even had the cheek to argue that he was entitled to a family life and his son needed a role model. Well, I take exception to all of those things. This is probably the best news that young Ruby has had it is the best news she's had in a long time.
Absolutely. I mean, do you know what? I mean, I think virtually everyone listening and watching just spat out their cornflakes and their toast right now, listening to that. This idea that your human rights mean that after committing the most heinous possible crimes, gang raping teenage girls who were drugged and made drunk and groomed for years to be available basically as treated like animals by these men, that you have a right to any private life. And the idea that your sons and daughters should have you around. I fear for the sons and daughters. Frankly, they shouldn't have any contact with you. But this is the thing. This is the absurd situation we have where human rights are being used, against everyone else's human rights. What about the human rights of the girls who were gang raped?
Exactly. When these two men they've been back in Rochdale for years. Ruby bumped into Adil Khan in local Asda when she didn't even know he was out of prison. Parole never got in touch with it. This is the case that continues to expose where the failures in the system are. And because the public understand this case, because of the drama Three Girls, they are astounded. This is my daily life. And I see it not only with the Rochdale case, Julia. Yeah. We see it at the foundation with case after case after case, victims bottom of the pile, legal aid being used to fund what I would say are horrendous arguments, lawyers becoming rich, men not charged with the right offences, a man who got a child pregnant, out of prison in less than 3 years, still in this country, still wandering the streets with his own children. It still enrages me.
Why is that still happening? How are the people in the courts, how are they not as horrified as you and I are?
I really, I ask myself that every day. I'm led to believe that this decision was made back in August, and it's only because of some digging by other people, by some journalists, that this has now finally been released.
And it should be public information. We need to know these men are on the streets.
That's what makes me hesitant about seeing if this is going to happen, because why would they not be shouting that from the rooftops in August?
Another 10 years of judicial reviews, no doubt. Maggie Oliver, look, you've just been an absolute hero to all these girls. 10 years after being convicted, they were abusing these girls for 10 years before that. They're not British born. They're from Pakistan. They're in this country abusing girls en masse, raping them. They've been convicted of these heinous crimes, barely served enough time in prison to justify for most of us. And on the streets, and they spent all these years fighting, saying they've got human rights and they've got right to a family life in this country. I mean, this country is insane, isn't it?
I think it's from top to bottom. The grooming gangs scandal shows that we have lost the moral plot, not investigated in the first place because of fears of community tensions or what have you. When you finally actually get a conviction, again, not seeing sentences that one would expect. And then you see
you
people,
serve half of it.
Exactly. And then you see people contesting deportations on the basis of their right to a family life. This is absurd, but it is.
I mean, don't blame the lawyers got to make a fast buck, but you shouldn't be able to claim you have no right to a family life when you're sent to prison. So it is. My view is, any serious crime at all. I mean, I'm talking like a year plus, probably even 6 months. You come to this country, I don't want you here. But the idea that you've come here and you're bringing, and again, this has always been a big thing, isn't it, about how we describe these men? Do you mention their ethnicity, their national heritage? Do you mention their religion? And people often say Asian grooming gangs. It's very specifically the vast majority of the men caught up in this particular form of child sex abuse. Because there are many other different forms in which it happens, and the majority of people in this country are white, and the majority of perpetrators are therefore white. But when it comes to the particular grooming gangs and this particular sort of modus operandi, it is men of Pakistani heritage. Not Asian men, men of Pakistani heritage.
Pakistani Muslim heritage. Very specific.
It's very specific, and it's about an attitude that is being brought from that country about particularly white girls, specifically about white girls as being just basically worthless, and therefore it's okay to do this. And then we had that sort of protection of them for many years by the police, the social services, the media, everyone just like, just don't, these girls are sluts. They're just turning up at 13 years old pregnant in A&E, but don't worry about it. And then a 50-year-old guy comes to pick her up. Yeah, there's nothing to see here. I mean, everything about this is terrifying.
It is, and I think it explodes the idea that political correctness is a nice or kind thing, that it's about looking out for the most vulnerable people in society. It's hard to think of someone more vulnerable than a 14-year-old who's in care, hooked on drugs, being abused, and yet these were precisely the people who were thrown under the bus amidst all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me so angry. Thank God for people like Maggie Oliver. I mean, she resigned her job to try and basically expose all of this. Also, by the way, all credit to the Times newspaper. Their investigations exposed this as well.